Introduction to global warming and climate change. Climate change refers to any significant long-term changes in measures of climate, such as temperature, precipitation, and wind patterns. Global warming is one aspect of climate change. It refers to the recent and ongoing rise in global average temperatures near the Earth's surface. Since the Industrial Revolution at the start of the 19th century, changes in climate have been primarily caused by human activities. The shift from human labor to machinery led to the widespread introduction of combustion engines and automobiles, and therefore a massive increase in the burning of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are formed by dead organisms that have been broken down and compressed over millions of years. They are a huge store for carbon dioxide. When they are burned, this carbon dioxide is released back into the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is one of the key greenhouse gases, and as these greenhouse gases accumulate, they absorb and re-reflect solar infrared radiation, largely contributing to rising yearly temperatures. Rising global temperatures lead to rising sea levels, ocean acidification, extremes in precipitation, and an increase in extreme weather events. All of these indicate drastic changes to habitats across the planet. They pose a threat to biodiversity as species struggle to adapt to changes occurring at increasingly high rates. In this presentation, we will examine how species and environments have reacted to climate change, biogeochemical cycles, biotic and abiotic factors, adaptations, genetic variation, and fitness.
What are biogeochemical cycles? Basically, elements and molecules cycle through natural pathways between living organisms and their environments. These cycles are closed systems, meaning that there's a finite amount of each element that's recycled, rather than created or destroyed. Therefore, these cycles rely on balance between the import and export of nutrients. What happens when we disrupt this balance? In the US, the amount of carbon that is absorbed or stored is only equivalent to roughly 17% of emissions annually. Clearly, humans are causing disruption on a massive scale. Obviously, we emit tons of CO2 through the burning of fossil fuels, but we also emit other greenhouse gases. Methane, which is emitted in large amounts by the agriculture industry, has a global warming potential 25 times that of CO2. Additionally, carbon sinks that store and absorb nitrogen are being destroyed through wildfires and deforestation. But the carbon cycle isn't the only nutrient cycle that we've disrupted. Humans have also caused massive disruption in the nitrogen cycle through the use of nitrogen-based fertilizer. Human-caused reactive nitrogen inputs are 5 times that from natural sources. Reactive nitrogen can be converted to nitrous oxide, which contributes to the greenhouse effect. Reactive nitrogen also stimulates the release of methane from soils and reduces plants' uptake of CO2, thus increasing the amount of both gases in the atmosphere. This shows that these nutrient cycles do not exist in isolation, but rather affect each other in dangerous ways. This leads us to the bigger problem, which is that things seem fine now, but the disruptions that we create will quickly compound into more drastic effects. We have to restore balance in these cycles as soon as possible, no matter how difficult it may be.
Deforestation is the permanent clearance of forest land for human activities. Humans can obtain timber, use the land for agriculture, or do mining. Abiotic effects include soil erosion, water chemistry, greenhouse gas emission, and effects on the water cycle. In a deforested area, heavy rainfall can cause soil erosion. Because there are no tree roots to absorb water and no tree canopy to slow down the rainfall, soil nutrients can be washed away. Deforestation encourages leaching to happen, which is the removal of water-soluble nutrients from the soil. Rivers, streams, or other water sources in the deforested area are prone to have higher nitrate level, lower oxygen level, and higher temperature. Species reside near water source may not be able to adapt to the sudden water temperature change. Deforestation causes non-absorbed carbon to be released to the atmosphere. Water cannot be returned to the atmosphere by the help of trees, which result in the lack of rain. The lack of rain can cause a dry climate, which result in drier soil and difficulty of growing crops. Biotic effects include habitat loss and effects on indigenous people. Deforestation results in the loss of animals' habitat. Animals that cannot relocate or adapt to the new environment may go extinct. Lack of trees can result in drastic temperature change from day to nighttime, which can be a threat for many species. Deforestation can affect indigenous people's lifestyle and homeland.
About how species have reacted to global warming. So adaptation. Adaptation is the biological mechanism by which species adjust to new environments. So there are 2 types of adaptation. Phenotypic plasticity occurs when an individual adjusts its phenotype, such as body structure and behavior, to tolerate stressor. Usually, that is the first and easiest reaction to detect. For example, because of the earlier emergence of insects caused by faster spring warming, some migrating birds have begun to lay eggs earlier to adapt to the new peak of insect prey. And the second wave for animals to adapt is to evolve through natural selection. And this would involve changes in frequencies in population across generations. Migration. Warmer temperature increase winter survival and promote the northward expansion of a range of animals, plants, and even pathogens. For example, many tree species adapt to specific conditions of temperature and humidity. With the change of these conditions, habitats become unsuitable for saplings and species attempt to migrate. Because of the long lifespan of trees, the effects may not be obvious for many years. However, species that only grow in some areas, such as sugar maple found in the parts of the US and Canada, may be very hard to find in their southern regions by the end of this century.
How global warming has affected the fitness of a species. As global warming progresses at a rapid pace, it alters not only long-term patterns but also the frequency and severity of severe weather events. As a result, within a few generations, environmental conditions could change dramatically. This may have unintended effects in the case of sexually selected traits, which are not only optimized in terms of the environment, but also between the sexes. Rising temperatures may cause subliminal effects on a species' physiology and functional efficiency, resulting in decreased population fitness and altered energy available for growth and reproduction. For instance, to maintain viable subpopulations in the wild, polar bears depend on sea ice as a base from which to hunt enough seals to accumulate fat energy to withstand time when seals are scarce. However, annual trends of sea ice distribution and freeze-up are shifting as a result of global warming. The loss of sea ice negatively impacts the long-term survival of polar bears. Longer periods of fasting, lower body conditions, reduced access to denning areas, lower survival of cubs as well as bears of other age group, and finally subpopulation decline.
I'm going to talk about how climate change can affect genetic variation. So because climate change is causing average temperatures to change, many species ranges are decreasing, as this image shows for bat species in Europe, and their populations are declining as well. Smaller populations are more susceptible to genetic drift, and when the species loses individuals, they may also lose any of those individuals' unique genetic variants, so overall genetic variation decreases. This can negatively impact the species' ability to evolve and adapt to the changing climate, since there are few variants for natural selection to act on. Low genetic variation can also lead to inbreeding depression, which decreases survival rates in the population and lowers fitness of the offspring. This has been observed in alpine chipmunks in Yosemite National Park, who have had to move to higher elevations since the temperature there has increased by about 3 degrees. Since their population has shrunk, they have lost many genetic variants, and it has now been found that the chipmunks have much less genetic diversity in all parts of their genome than they did 100 years ago. And similar scenarios have also been observed and predicted in endangered lizard species in Australia, bat species in Europe, and many more.
Next section, we're going to talk about climate change and species extinction. Feel free to scan the QR code at any time for more details. We're seeing that global extinction rates are almost 1,000 times higher than the background extinction rate. Anthropogenic human activities are causing an increase in greenhouse gas emissions that are forcing climates to change. As a result, species are facing rapid directional selection. As species begin moving towards climates that are more suitable for themselves, we're also seeing the dilution of native gene pools with movement faster than ever. Climate change has also been encouraging the genetic hybridization of formerly allopatric species. The West Virginia white butterflies are a perfect example of populations pushing northwards to maintain with suitable climates. As you can see in the picture on the right, in 2070, the populations are expected to move towards the north. As they move towards the north, they begin competing with the Poecilia in the northern regions for resources, resulting in competition. As a result, the West Virginia white butterflies are expected to be lower in fitness than the Poecilia, resulting in their possible extinction due to climate change.
Now I'm going to talk about artificial selection. As an additional project, our group also created a website for climate change. You can scan the QR code in the corner to browse the specific page for this topic. Many species are endangered due to the rising temperature. Corals in the ocean are experiencing worldwide bleaching events, which put them in danger because the symbiotic algae that used to provide nutrients for them is driven away when surroundings warm up. To save such species, scientists are promoting artificial selection to help them become stronger. The key principle here is to purposely select for the more adaptable traits, mimicking the natural selection. Here is an ongoing research. After exposing corals to the rising temperature, the best performers are chosen to interbreed. Their next generation can potentially be more resistant to higher temperature and can adapt to the warming Earth better. Artificial selection is advantageous because it's controllable and takes much less time compared to natural selection. However, it can potentially damage gene diversity because it narrows down the gene pool manually. Trade-offs are also inevitable because individuals have less energy to spend on other places, and their growth rate may get compromised. What's more, it's still a big challenge to help the whole population to evolve, so other methods to save species are under exploration. Thanks for listening.